Good morning and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, one in a series of virtual sessions that the Center on Global Energy Policy at Columbia is hosting as part of our Global Energy Summit. My name is Jason Bordoff. I am co-founding dean of the Columbia Climate School and the director of the Center on Global Energy Policy. Today, we are going to discuss the landmark new IEA report released on Monday on options to create a global net zero energy economy by 2050. Let me quickly say that this event is being webcast live and the full video will be available online later today. For those of you joining us via Zoom, you can submit a question at any time by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I'm now thrilled to introduce our featured speaker, the head of the International Energy Agency, Dr. Fatih Birol. He needs no introduction to an audience of climate and energy leaders like this one. He's been at the IEA for a quarter century and is widely recognized as one of the foremost global figures in the energy world. He's also chair of the World Economic Forum's Energy Advisory Board and serves on the UN Secretary General's Advisory Board on Sustainable Energy for All. He was a keynote speaker at this conference 3 years ago. We're honored to have him back with us virtually. Hopefully we could do it in person soon, again, here in New York City. This, again, has been a very busy week for him with being paid to this really important and excellent new study that the IEA put out yesterday, in fact, its first effort to model what a global pathway to net zero 2050 looks like. Fatih, we're really pleased to have you with us today to discuss the new report's finding. I want to turn things over to you for a brief overview, and then I'll come back and we'll have a conversation about it. The floor is yours, Fatih.
Jason, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to your meeting once again. And as you said, 3 years ago, we had a good discussion. I remember very well in the, if I'm not wrong, in the library of your university. And I will also take this opportunity to congratulate you for this great initiative, being the dean of the climate school. It is, we have high expectations from you and academia in general at your new job. Now, Jason, as you said, we published our report yesterday, and we are very happy to see that there is a overwhelming for us. We are a modest, humble organization with some 330 people in Paris, with this overwhelming reaction from different parts of the world, and many thanks to those colleagues who are commending our study, who are commenting on our study, who are suggesting us new things, and also those who do not agree with this or that finding. I would like to start why we have done this study. We started to carry out this work September, last September. Entire work is being carried out with a big group of modelers, analysts, investment colleagues at the IEA in 8 months of time, and I believe it was a miracle that such a report came out. We see that I'm sure the other speakers must have already referred to that. We see that the clean energy options today are getting more and more cost-effective and cheaper. Wind, solar, which we crowned 3 months ago as the new king of the power markets. We are seeing many efficiency measures are taken. The cost of electric cars are coming down. These are all good, and the electric car sales are breaking records. Solar installments the same. But at the same time, as we have announced only a few weeks ago again, the global emissions are increasing substantially this year. Our estimate for the 2021 is very clear. This year, we will see the second largest increase in the history of the world in terms of emissions. Huge increase. Many governments, again, another aspect, many governments around the world are committing themselves to a net zero carbon neutral world by 2050. These political statements are also very good, but as I tried to mention at the President Biden's Climate Leaders Summit, there is a growing gap between the commitments, or in other words, the rhetoric, and what is happening in the real life. So what we decided to carry out a study, while we are happy welcome one country and another coming to the commitments with 2050, what does it mean in the energy sector? What needs to happen in the energy sector? Because as we all know, energy sector emissions are about 80% of the global total emissions. So if we want to reach those targets, we need a major transformation in the energy sector. So our work is, if I can simplify, and my colleagues, those modelers who work on this since 8 months shouldn't hear what I'm going to say. Our job was simply translate those government commitments in 2050 to, in the next 30 years, what needs to happen, what actions need to be taken in the energy industry so that we can reach those targets. So this is what we have done. And if I can summarize what the world has to do in the next 30 years, I see 3 important tasks for all of us. Number 1, especially in the next 10 years or so, make the most out of the clean energy technologies that are already in the market, such as solar, such as wind, such as efficiency, such as electric cars, such as nuclear power in some countries. Make the most out of them. This is number 1. Number 2, in parallel to the first one, there are sectors that needs much more effort than only with renewables and efficiency to decarbonize. So therefore, there are technologies which are under development today, such as advanced battery technologies, such as different hydrogen solutions, such as the direct air capture. We have to push the button of innovation in parallel to what we are doing with the existing ones. So this is the second job we have to do. And this is not enough, these 2. A third one, we have to reduce the use of fossil fuels substantially. So 3 different jobs. Make the most out of the existing clean energy options. Second, push the button to innovate the technologies under development which will be badly needed for the sectors such as iron, steel, cement, aviation, shipping, and so on. And third, reduce the use of fossil fuels. How will this happen? Now, this will, I should say, the key word here, or the key line, if I may say so, is mobilizing investments. Now, today, you follow our work closely, Jason, thank you for that. As we have mentioned in our work every year, how much investment was put in the energy sector. Today, the global energy investments for coal, oil, renewables, efficiency, everything is about $2 trillion. In order to make this transformation in the energy sector, this $2 trillion in 2030, for example, need to go to $5 trillion. And not only that, this surge in the investment is not enough. Today, of that $2 trillion, big chunk goes to fossil fuels. In the $5 trillion 2030, big chunk, almost exclusively, need to go to clean energy technologies. Now, is it possible? When we look at the global capital, it is possible, especially maybe we can come to this in a discussion, for the North America and Europe, but the capital is there. We also look, what does it mean, this transformation for the economy, for jobs? This part of the work we carried out together with our colleagues at the International Monetary Fund, IMF. What we found out is that this historical surge in the investments lead to each year an additional growth of 0.4 percentage point for the global economy. So investment surge, additional economic growth. Jobs. So we look at the jobs also very carefully. We see two different aspects of that. Number one, as a result of huge investments in the clean energy sector for solar panels, electricity network, this is big grids, building grids, modern digital electricity grids, car manufacturing and others, and efficiency in construction and others, we at about 30 million new jobs. But we are also losing about 5 million jobs, especially in the communities or the countries where the which are close to fossil fuel resources, are using fossil fuels for their economic activity. So the 30 million new jobs and 5 million lost, but they are not in the same places. They are different places. So this is an important challenge as we highlight in our work. Now, what kind of energy world in 2050? Today, as we stand today in the year 2021, global energy mix is dominated by fossil fuels, close to 80%. And in 2050, if this transformation we are talking about can take place, it will be dominated by clean energy. Let me give you one example. Solar. Today, the share of solar in the global energy mix is about 1%. In 2050, it goes up to about 20%, and as such, solar becomes the single largest source of global energy mix. Such a big jump there. So big change, and I should tell you that the global energy demand in 2050, it is also interesting to note, 2050 is smaller than today, fueling an economy which is larger than today, and the population larger than today, mainly as a result of energy efficiency. Another important topic. Now, what we have done, Jason, we have not only make these calculations, projections, the pathway, we call it, between now and 2030, 2050, we have, in our study, we came up with over 400 milestones for the governments around the world to realize. Some signposts or milestones, as we call it. And I would like to tell you a few of them. As of this year, no need for additional new investments for oil and gas fields, in new fields. No need for coal mines or coal mines expansion, number one. Number two, As of this year, no need for unabated coal-fired power plants. Another one, 2035, no more sales of internal combustion engine cars. Another one, 2040, the global electricity generation is net zero. So these are some of the signposts we are putting in our report, and there is more than 400 of them. And this is, I think, for us to explain the government's stakeholders what needs to be done, not only making just forecasts or projections. Two other points, and I finish here. In our report, we also highlight the critical importance of international collaboration. We have made a sensitivity analysis, if I may say so, or the alternative analysis, and we have seen that in the absence of an international collaboration, we will see that the reaching net zero targets will be much more difficult, if at all possible. So international collaboration is critical here. And once again, I am thankful to the President Biden for organizing this Climate Leaders Summit and bringing many governments together there in that context. Finally, if I ask myself, looking at the numbers, looking at the projections, looking at the energy sector, the appetite from governments, industry, citizens, whether or not this net zero 2050 is something that the world can reach. My answer is the following. The pathway we put there, if one looks, studies that, the pathway to reach net zero by 2050 is narrow, but still achievable if there is a perfect international collaboration, and if the governments around the world move accordingly, at least similar to the milestones we put together. We have, Jason came up with the world's most comprehensive pathway in the energy sector to net zero, but this is a pathway. This is not the pathway, and therefore different governments with different backgrounds, different priorities may come up with their pathways, but we wanted to put it on the table in order to provide a framework for the international and national discussions. I stop here and looking forward to our chat, our discussions, I should say.
Fatih, thank you so much, and congratulations again to you and the whole team for putting this important landmark report together. Laura Cozy and Timur Gul and the whole team that put it together. A huge congratulations to them. And thanks for being with us to talk about it. Really interesting set of opening comments and remarks, especially your last point about the takeaway that people have, whether it's possible. I was sort of struck by the notes and reactions I was getting yesterday that, look, this shows we can do it, or look, this shows it's almost impossible. And people are having quite different reactions to how significantly and quickly the scale and magnitude of the changes you described required. So I want to, we're certainly not going to have enough time. We have just about 25 minutes or so, and I want to ask you about several pieces of what you just said. Let me start with investment, which was one of the first things you talked about, from $2 to, I think, almost $5 trillion. I wanted to ask you where that comes from. Is this public sector spending that needs to happen? Is it mostly private sector? What's the role of the multilateral development banks? And I see already one question coming in from someone you know well, Ian Kahn, who asks, who pays unabated coal, given much of it is in the developing world?
Okay, so first of all, Jason, I should tell you that there is no lack of intangible capital. Capital goes there where it feels, it smells that it will make profit. Okay, so I don't see a big problem or big challenge. There is a challenge, but not a big one, in North America and in Europe. The issue is what will happen, as Ian mentions, Ian asks, by the way, greetings to Ian from Paris. What will happen in India? What will happen in Indonesia? What will happen in Africa? Because why it is important? It is important because bulk of the emissions growth will come from those countries. The emissions growth will not come from Switzerland or from UK or from France or I don't know, Canada. It will come from these countries. And when we look at the clean energy investment flow in these countries, we see big hesitance from the companies and investors. So what needs to happen? For me, most importantly, governments, including the US government, but also other major countries, especially those who are in G7 and G20, should give an unmistakable signal to the investors. What is that? You investor, if you invest in the clean energy options, this is a lucrative option for you by providing the investment framework. But not only this, they should also give the unmistakable signal to the investors that you investor, be careful. You are investing in a technology which is working against our fight against climate change, a dirty investment. You make a big risk to lose money there. So if this can be given, this will be, I think, the number one. Very important signal. Second, I think 2050 net zero is for the world. But as we put it in our report, Jason, rich countries, in my view, need to reach their targets in our report 5 years earlier than the others. Give more space for the emerging countries. And at the same time, support them through different mechanisms. Third, and I'll stop here, we have seen where the bottleneck is. I tried to highlight where the bottleneck is, namely the clean energy finance in the emerging world. Seeing this bottleneck, we are coming up with a series of, similar to this one, study, on 6th of June, working with the World Bank and the World Economic Forum, financing clean energy transitions in the emerging world. We are coming with this report, and this is a report that we are going to release 9th of June. Sorry for that, 9th of June. And if you wish, you know my colleague Tim Gould and the others will be happy to share them with you and with your colleagues. And I believe there is a job for the domestic governments to do to prepare the basis for the attracting clean energy investments so that they can prepare their economies for the future, modern economies. But also in the international financial architecture, we may also look for some amendments, if I may say so. We will come up with some suggestions. I understand that our friend Ken Rogoff is or will be a host of you today or yesterday. I know Ken will be there. It is an area that Ken and myself discussed several times together with you, Jason, in Davos and elsewhere.
Thank you, Fatih. Several additional topics I want to get to. I know we have limited time, so we'll try to have some on each of these. I want to unpack the finding that made many headlines, as you know, no new investment in fossil fuel supply. And you've warned for many years about the risks of climate change. You've also warned in recent years about the risk of underinvesting in oil and gas supply, because the pace of decline in the sustainable development scenario, the pathway to the Paris goals, was exceeded by the pace of natural declines. But now you're saying no new investment in fossil fuel supply. So just help explain to people why that shift for some who I think reacted yesterday and seeing now as being inconsistent.
Yeah. So as you know, Jason, we make scenarios. In this scenario, what we just came up with, there are two aspects. One is the demand, the other one is the supply. On the demand side, I mentioned one of them, for example, the banning of sales of internal combustion engine cars, moving to basically electric cars. If this happens, you don't need oil as much as today. But the risk is, if we cut the supply, but we fail to reduce the demand, this is a risk. Or the other way around, if we don't cut the supply, the new investments, oil investments, but the demand goes down as a result of what is happening in the with the cars or trucks or petrochemical industry, then there is a problem. So therefore, one of the issues that we underline that we need an orderly transition here of the global energy system. If we did not have, as we mentioned in the beginning, if we didn't have such a climate goal, then there is no problem. Of course, demand is coming strongly, supply is coming. What we are saying is we are just translating the 2050 government target to the real action in the energy industry. And this is how it goes. You have today 90 million barrels per day of oil. You can have 24 by 2050 if the governments are serious to reach their targets. If they are not serious, then we don't reach that target, then of course there will be a different oil demand and different oil demand supply picture.
And what does the study find about fossil fuel investment beyond new supply and new fields, say in existing fields or in projects? You said no new coal plants, but as you know, there's discussion, debate about how the multilateral development institutions think about things like gas power plants. And particularly, this ties back to a question that I see has come in from Somani Sengupta at the New York Times. Yesterday at our conference, we had leaders from Africa, the Vice President of Nigeria, for example, who basically said he thought it was unfair and counterproductive to stop gas development in a country like his that is using very little energy per capita. How do you think about the kind of investments needed? Are things like natural gas part of that? And is that consistent with your net zero 2050 scenario?
First of all, again, I want to iterate one thing in general, what I said a few minutes ago, and come to the gas and oil and address one, in my view, misunderstanding or a challenge to understand. First of all, once again, there should be a difference between the rich countries and the emerging countries. This is difference in terms of timing, in terms of obligations, in terms of what they are going to do. Plus, again, as we said in our report, the rich countries should support the emerging countries in terms of the technology and in terms of the maybe de-risking some of the clean energy investments. So this is one issue. Second, What we are saying is we do not say there is no oil or there is no gas anymore as of 2022. What we are saying is it is use will go down much more much stronger in coal, less in oil, and much less in natural gas. And we are seeing that the investments in the already existing fields, approved fields, will continue. We don't stop them. What we are talking is developing new fields or no new exploration, for example, just to make it simple. No new exploration activity. And in fact, when you look at the numbers today, many IOCs exploration investments are almost close to zero for some time. And therefore, I would make the distinction between developed countries and developing countries and the no gas versus less gas, and also the fields which are already approved and the fields which are new to be discovered. So three different distinctions here.
I want to ask you about innovation and what kind of new technologies you find. Do we have all the tools we need, or are there a lot we don't have yet? I know over the past weekend, Secretary Kerry here in the United States made a comment that about half of emissions in net zero 2050 will come from technologies that are not ready yet. It sort of led to some confusion about whether that meant they had to be invented or they weren't available at commercial scale. But what do you think, what do you find is needed in terms of new technology and innovation?
So first of all, about the numbers, and second, Secretary Kerry, what our numbers show that of this reduction between now and 2050 of the emissions, more than 50% can come from the technologies we have already in our hands, in the market, ready for the market. What are those again? Solar, wind, hydro, nuclear, electric cars, and the others. But there are some sectors which needs technologies which are under development, and they need innovation. And these technologies would make around close to 50% of the emission reduction, and they are not ready for the market. And some of them are, for example, where solar was 10 years ago. Some of those technologies, where solar was 10 years ago, is solar made this as a result of government support, as a result of incentives and the others, R&D. Solar is today became a mature technology. We have to do the same story for those technologies, such as the advanced battery technologies, hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, direct air capture, some of them. And when it comes to Secretary Kerry's statement, I was, to be honest with you, I was shocked by some of the reactions. I think Secretary Kerry is one of the greatest hopes we have today. We are making reports, graphs, but he's making real life, changing the politics of the climate change. He might have chosen this or that word, but I understand that he wanted to highlight the issue of critical importance of innovation, and the critics to him, I find, to say the least, extremely unfair, to be honest with you. I think those people who are genuinely, I understand genuine, I underline genuinely interested to fight against climate change should, I think, support Secretary Kerry, his team, and what the US government is up today to do at home and abroad. Of course, we can give our comments, suggestions, and so on, but I found that line of, if I may say so, criticism, at least unhelpful, if not irresponsible.
Let me ask you just quickly about one or two particular technologies. I think I'm right when reading the report that many of the IPCC scenarios for, say, 1.5 degrees have significant amounts of carbon capture with bioenergy. Yeah. The IEA has less of that and more relies on, say, renewables and hydrogen. Is that right? And can you talk about that shift? What do you see happening in the renewable market or the market for green and blue hydrogen that you see so much promise there?
Yeah. Jason, what we see is that the solar is one of the cheapest source of new electricity generation, if not the cheapest one in many parts of the world, especially in the developing world. And we see about in our pathway, some 90% of the electricity generation comes from renewables. So big relief, at least because what we see is that we will first decarbonize the power sector and then the rest. So we can put the decarbonized power sector, put it in bed, if I may say so, and look at the other tough issues at the same time. Now, because it is getting cheaper, there is a strong support, and it is easier than others. And for the carbon capture and storage, I know that there is a lot of discussion on that, but we think it is a critical technology. It's a critical technology, and without the carbon capture and storage, especially in the emerging world, it will be impossible to decarbonize at the speed we want. 3 countries, Jason: China, India, Indonesia. Over 60% of the electricity comes from coal, and the iron steel sector is again coal and the others. And these 3 countries make almost 45% of the global population. So without providing them with some solutions, new technology solutions, just to tell them do this, do that, is not the right way to do. And for us, carbon capture and storage is important, but unfortunately, it did not provide positive, hopeful signals that we wanted to see up to now. And we hope with the US government, with Norway, with UK, some of the other Europeans, Japan, Middle East countries, and Asia, we will see carbon capture and storage being the part of the game. But our CCS, carbon capture and storage expectations are, you are right, lower than the most of the IPCC 1.5 degree scenarios. Our bioenergy numbers are lower than most of the, if not all, IPCC scenarios. If I can say one thing here, Jason, unfortunately, some colleagues who are really finding solutions to our incredibly difficult to solve problem don't like this technology or that technology, even though they are clean, because it's not they are in quote in love with. We don't have that luxury. I mean, colleagues who are saying this don't make their hands dirty with data. I mean, if you look at the data, it is impossible to exclude, for example, I give one even more controversial, nuclear power. Okay, if you don't want to put nuclear power in your country, I understand. But nuclear power today in US and Europe is the single largest source of clean electricity. If you just shut them down, how are you going to fill it with the entire system, with the solar and wind in such a quick part of time and with a secure electricity system? So we also at the IEA, where we make this report, we not only have a scenario to have a net zero 2050, but also we look at the energy security aspects and also the economic growth aspects as well.
I want to, I think just in closing, because we'll run out of time, ask you, you made a really important point earlier about energy efficiency and finding that the energy use in 2050 is lower than today. I noted before the conversation we had with leaders from Africa, for example, of course, there's parts of the world using very little energy per capita. There's a pretty clear historic relationship between GDP and population growth and energy use. So that requires a pretty significant change. You also find that in behavioral changes, like moderating temperatures for heat and cooling, maybe riding bikes instead of cars in urban areas. I was wondering if you could talk more about that. And also, is part of the driver for that, tell me if I'm right about this, obviously you're not only modeling net zero 2050, you're trying to achieve a certain temperature increase. So there are different pathways. And to get there, you can draw a straight line. But I think your modeling actually has something more ambitious than a straight line, which is why emissions need to start falling even faster than a straight line. And because the energy system takes so long to turn over, there's only so much you can do. So you need a lot of behavioral change, because there's some stuff you can do sooner than others. Is that right? And can you talk about that?
Yeah. Okay, we have a couple of minutes, but I should tell you that, first of all, in our pathway, in addition to reaching the the net zero emissions by 2050 and securing the energy supplies, providing economic growth, we also come up with the one of the SDG goals, full electricity access. And the overwhelming majority comes from renewables, mini-grid solutions, off-grid solutions, and other solutions, which is very important, as you know, for the IEA since almost 2 decades. Now, for us, the most important for the emission reduction, as you mentioned, most important milestone, this again the keyword, is by 2030 halving the emissions. We halve the emissions until 2030 and see a decline. But energy sector is a very slowly moving sector. The infrastructure is very resistant. So it is not, you talk about the behavioral changes, it is not like a bicycle energy. It's like a big tanker. Changing the direction will be taking time. It is the reason we are urging, if we are serious to reach our targets, urging to move quickly here. Behavioral changes, I mean, they are about, altogether, they account about 4% of total emissions that we are, it's not a big chunk, but we also wanted to highlight that there is a need for citizens to be a part of the solution as well. They have to change some of the behaviors they have, maybe some cooler temperature, maybe some of the short haul flights replaced by mass transportation, by trains and others. We have come up with those suggestions to give an idea what kind of behavioral changes are needed. And these behavioral changes will not happen by our reports, by our speeches and so on. This will happen by the governments informing them and sometimes also giving signals to their citizens.
Fatih, thank you for being with us. So much more to talk about, but I know we are out of time. We will have you back again soon. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. As we mentioned, the full video recording of this event will be available on the Center on Global Energy Policy's website later today. The next session in our Global Energy Summit will start in 15 minutes when I will talk with the CEO of BP, Bernard Looney. For a full calendar of events, please visit the Center on Global Energy Policy's website. Fatih, thank you again. Really wonderful to see you. Congratulations on the new report. Thanks to all of you. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day and look forward to seeing you soon.